What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome in to the reveal of my number 27th ranked team in my NBA preseason power rankings with a look into the Chicago Bulls. And this Bulls team has a ton of fun stuff to talk about. We have a fantastic guest on my guy, Ross Pins, or Shy Sports Ross on social media platforms here, joining me today at the end of this show to break down this Bulls squad. I do apologize about not having my normal setup currently. I'm out of town enjoying the California sun. We'll be back in studio in about a week or so. A couple final checking points where we get started here today. Please do me a big favor if you haven't already and hit that subscribe button, leave a like here on the channel. Trying to hit 10,000 subscribers here by the start of the NBA season. We can hit that goal really quickly. If you guys that are watching right now, do me a big favor, hit that subscribe button. And one last thing, if you're coming up from Twitter after seeing my post about an hour ago from the time of me recording this, I announced I'm leaving Lakers Nation. I'm not going anywhere here on this channel, obviously, and I'll give you guys an update in a separate video about what's happening next. Because unless something happens in the next week, I do have a plan for what's coming next. So do me a big favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will explain everything in a later video. But we got a fun team to talk about here. The Bulls coming in ranking 27th in my power ranking series. They are the start of a new tier in this power ranking series. They are now in tier 5. We are done with the flat out rebuilding teams in this series. The Bulls are starting off a tier of teams that are, they still project to be like pretty bad, right? But they are, teams that I think are playing hopefuls, where if everything goes right, this team can really make a run for the play-in tournament. So we're going to start this off like we always do with our additions and departures. And the Bulls had a pretty busy offseason. The Bulls, they lose DeMar DeRozan, they lose Alex Caruso, both via trade, so they were able to get something back for both of those players. They also lose Andre Drummond in free agency. With the Bulls offseason, we haven't talked about who they got. They got Josh Giddey. I'm not really giddy about that. All jokes, but they got Josh Giddey. They got Miles Buzelis. I'm super giddy about that with the 11th overall pick. They got Jalen Smith at free agency to shore up some of that front court depth. And then I'm gonna add Lonzo Ball. I didn't add Chris Duarte to this list, but they did get Chris Duarte in that in that 3-team sign and trade for DeMar DeRozan. I am adding Lonzo Ball to this list because there's been reports that Lonzo Ball could actually make his return this season. And in a way, that would be an addition because Lonzo Ball hasn't played basketball in 2 years, but he's been on the roster. So that would be an addition for the Bulls. Let's start this off with the DeMar DeRozan situation here. With DeMar and Alex, that is the kind of a classic case of like, bro, just trade them while the iron's kind of hot, right? They definitely should, and they definitely should have traded Alex Caruso, back near the trade deadline, and that's definitely on Chicago and a mishap on their end, not trading AC back when they had a real opportunity to, but they were able to get Josh Giddey. And I don't want to talk too much about the player currently, but I think with Josh Giddey, I think Giddey actually has a chance to kind of rebuild some of his value. Because I think the kind of perception around Giddey right now is, that that Giddey's kind of lost, right? Or that he's kind of a lost cause or whatever. At the end of the day, Giddey, I want to say he's only about to turn 22 years old, right? So like Giddey has a ton of potential still. And it's just unfortunate it hasn't really panned out. Like he was to a certain extent, unplayable in certain games throughout the playoffs last season, right? But Giddey's super talented dude still, and this is a spot where Chicago, I don't think are really trying to compete, really trying to win. This is a spot where for Giddey, he could come and kind of restore some of his value and get back to playing some good ball. So I am excited for Giddey. This is a great landing spot for Josh Giddey, I think, and I'm definitely excited about this spot for him. And then obviously we got Miles Buzelis, who had a top 6 grade on in this draft class. They get him at 11. I mean, I am just so stoked that the Bulls didn't do the most Chicago Bulls thing ever, which would be drafting a guard where their guard room is already, they have a billion guards in their rotation, especially with Alonzo Ball coming back into the frame potentially this season. So I'm glad that they went not only with BPA, but they didn't take a freaking guard again. Because that was mocked the entire mock draft cycle. They go Miles Buzelis. I mean, my pro com for him was Franz Wagner, and we'll get into more of his player type in just a second. Jalen Smith, fine, backup big, I suppose that on again a team like this that doesn't really have a lot of expectations or anything like that. This is a completely fine spot. All right, let's start this off with recap. Or not recap, but looking into our player grades, how we grade out the entire roster. We have a couple of new additions to kind of how this is gonna look now. So let's get that started. Let's start off with the Bulls team. Obviously, you got stars. You got Zach LaVine. Kobe White is a very much emerging star for this team. And I think it's appropriate to start off with Kobe White. I do have the arrow pointed up on Kobe White right now. Kobe White experienced a breakout season last season. I think if we're going off what the actual meaning of most improved player is, I thought Kobe White should have won it, and dare I say was robbed of most improved player. Not trying to take anything away from Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey had a great season in his own right. But Kobe White had his second best season in terms of true shooting percentage. He took massive steps forward as a playmaker. Very, very smooth pull-up jump shooter where he ranked in the 69th percentile in terms of pull-up jump shooting efficiency per synergy. He has just super, super good feel. It's like as a pick and roll operator where he's super crafty. He's a really good finisher around the basket, and like I mentioned, an excellent shooter. If you just let him get hot, like he can become a flamethrower. He kind of has like a herky jerky like motion to him when he is operating out of ball screens, or just like when he's dribble penetrating in general, right? Where like he like it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander-esque, right? Where like the stop-start ability, like how he'll throw his body around in the middle of the lane. It's fun. It throws off defenders. It's really, really useful if you can get it to work. I would really, really like to see Kobe White kind of increase his pick and roll 3-point shooting volume. I think he can clean up some turnovers and pick and roll still, and he's still growing in that department. And for that reason, I think I asked this to my guy Ross at the end of the episode. Like, man, am I crazy for saying that Kobe White can take another step forward? And the answer was no. Like, I'm not crazy. Like, I think you increase the volume of pick and roll threes, you get a little bit better as a playmaker because it's there. Like, he can make a ton of different passes with the ball in his hand. And you can, even though I kind of criticize the turnovers, you could tell how much he's grown as a playmaker, where the game is kind of slowing down for Kobe White now. And, can make any pass you could think of. And the processor has, and I think it's going to really, really just continue to improve. Really quickly, I'm going to stop right here, and we're going to talk about some of the new grades that we have on our screen. So we have 3 new grades. The third one really more so impacts the next graphic, and that's the defensive tiers. So coaching wise, we got Billy Donovan here, who is in tier 4, which is a big cluster of teams. There are a lot of NBA teams that just have fine NBA coaches. There's actually a lot less NBA teams with awful coaching than you think it is. And I think that Billy Donovan's a fine coach. I think schematically he's cool. I think he's a perfectly fine coach. He's done some development here with guys like Ayo, with guys like obviously the biggest one is Kobe White. Patrick Williams has experienced some solid development here as well. So nothing too much to say to add on with when we're talking about Billy Donovan. And the other tier here is the bench, where it's gonna rank in the 7th tier. It's gonna be 25th to 29th, which is a C minus. It's a C minus bench. We can kind of skip. We can fast forward to the bench here. We get back to our starters. They have some guys here that I do like. I like Ayo Dosunmu a lot. He really, I think, is the guy that's most likely to take that next step You have him, Kobe White, Mattis. They have some interesting pieces here in Chicago, and I just assume it was fun. I'm super, super excited for his growth and his development here in Chicago. And he's going to be a guy that I make sure I list and shout out in my top 10 breakouts video when I do that before the season starts. And Io is a really, really gifted off-ball shooter and, scorer, a good finisher at the basket, sneaky athlete, I feel. And I honestly just want to see more reps with Io. And, another situation where I think they, and I kind of talk about this with the Bulls in the, interview with my guy Ross, that the Bulls kind of do this thing that not very many teams are able to do, and or they're better at this than some other teams. Excuse me. They did it with Patrick Williams, they did it with Kobe White, and they probably are doing it with Ayo Dosunmu, where it's we are going to pay you a good year, if not more, earlier than when you're going to break out. Like, look at Patrick Williams' contract. Yeah, and it's 5 years, 90, and on the surface, that's like, ooh, that's kind of a lot, but let's say, let's say that he breaks out. Now that contract is one of the 5 best in the league. Kobe White's contract is a bargain. Ayo Dosunmu, like, starting guard in the future, I think is well within his range of possibilities. He is a stud, and shout out to Chicago for being able to keep him around. But for me, that's kind of where the optimism, kind of dies off for me with this Bulls bench. They have Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith is a guy that just consistently hasn't been able to, like, stay around in NBA rotations. He kind of fell out of the rotation last season for the Pacers. And it just kind of feels like everywhere he's gone, it's like, oh, okay, like, he's fine, but, he's not, spectacular or anything like that, right? Didn't play much in the playoffs, like I mentioned. He's a nice stretch big. He shot the hell out of the ball last season, shot, 41.7% on catch-and-shoot threes last season per Synergy. And Jalen Smith shot, 44.7% on pick and roll or pick and pop threes, per Synergy last season. So there is definitely some stuff, that Jalen Smith can provide, but I just don't have any trust in that kind of, like, really being real. And then, like I said, like, the rest of this bench is really kind of just up in the air. We do have to get back to the starters here, and we will. I do really, really fast want to touch on Matas Buzelis, who, like I said, I adored Matas Buzelis' film. And, from somebody that, and it actually did take me a while. It took me a bit. But this guy, the best advice I'll give somebody that's like, I don't know about Matas, right? When you watch Matas with the G League, take that with a grain of salt in a good way, right? Like, because I remember I was seeing all this hype or whatever about Matas Buzelis. Matas Buzelis is one of the earlier players that I graded. And I remember seeing all this hype. I remember seeing top 3 hype or whatever on Matas Buzelis. I'm like, okay, let's see what the hype is all about. And I remember going to watch Matas Buzelis, and my very first reaction was like, I'm kind of underwhelmed watching this. I'm not going to lie to y'all. And then you put the G League Ignite into, like, context, and you're like, oh, shoot. Okay, now let's kind of watch it from that lens. So, like, oh, okay, like, he is really, really fun offensive versatility. Can be utilized in post-ups, off screens, pick and rolls, spot up, off-ball possessions, etc. And that's honestly, like, the single best thing the G League Ignite did for Matas Buzelis is they really showed off how versatile he is as an offensive player. Really nice playmaking feel, especially as, like, a secondary creator, has real upside in that regard. He's a really good rebounder where he has good technique on his box outs. He attacks the ball at his peak in the air. Really good stuff. He showed incredible flashes. Going back to his versatility, that's why my pro comp for Matas Buzelis was Franz Wagner, because he has incredible versatility both as an offensive and defensive player, where he showed flashes as a weak side shot blocker and helper. And I think that he fits really nicely with his ability to switch, to play in a switching schemes defensively, where he can use his length to contest shots and guard the ball, or be used in an off-ball situation where, again, he has to, be a low man, weak side rim protector. He is more of he's more of a finesse player right now. And that is something we're like, okay, cool. We would like to see you add more muscle and just improve his upper body and core strength. Because I think the bigger wings in the NBA, like your LeBrons, your Kawhis, or whatever, not necessarily saying that he would get those matchups year one, but I just think the bigger wings in general could, potentially give him some trouble and could kind of bully him to a certain extent at the NBA level. And that kind of affects him on both ends, where offensively, at least with the G League Ignite, it kind of devolved into him shooting a bunch of tough-ass shots at times or take wild, out-of-control shots at the rim. But with the 11th overall pick, I wound up giving him a top 6 grade in this class. So this was a slam dunk pick. One of my more favorite picks in this draft class. And once again, shout out to the Chicago Bulls for that one. Recognizing the talent, they've always been interested in him from what we've heard here. So, and that kind of wraps it up. The rest of these guys are guys that you're really not optimistic about. Chris Duarte, I don't know what to really say about Chris Duarte at this point. He's the guy that I really, really, really liked, and I thought that honestly he had a shot to kind of break out last season in Sacramento. It just hasn't fully translated yet with Chris Duarte. He shot 27.3% on spot up threes. Just not a good enough shooter, I think, to play off the ball. He's a bad finisher. Shot 50% at the rim last season. I mean, there's some off-ball upside in terms of like versatility, can shoot off of handoffs, I suppose, but I'm kind of not putting any more stock into Chris Duarte, unfortunately. Hopefully it does pan out with Chris Duarte, but for the sake of this bench, I think they really, really, really need Chris Duarte to, somehow find, that next juice, if you will. And then, if we want to touch on, Lonzo Ball here. Lonzo, I can't really, and that's why I just like flat out gave him the red arrow, the red plus sign, not the red arrow, because I don't know truthfully what to do with Lonzo Ball. He hasn't played a basketball game in 2 years now. Like, I mean, if the shooting and the playmaking is still there, like, okay, then we're still cooking with something, I suppose, right? But man, I'm excited. I am most importantly just glad that Lonzo is able to walk without any pain anymore, and it does seem like he is going to be able to come back and be healthy again this season. But let's get back to the starting five here, because we did kind of take a quick break to talk about the new tiers and whatnot. With this starting five and with the Chicago Bulls, you got to talk about Zach LaVine. And Zach LaVine, I kind of feel similarly to Jeremy Grant, two players that get just ribbed on for their contracts, and deservedly so. Where I'm not going to say like it's not in any capacity like not deserved, right? But as purely a talent, I do think Zach LaVine's, kind of become a little underrated if we're just simply talking about the talent. He's still an incredibly dynamic 3-level scoring threat that is an absolute flamethrower when he gets hot. He is coming off his worst efficiency since his early Chicago days. He's a fine playmaker, but damn it, man, like the shot making, the still like the athletic traits that he still holds, like it's not like he's ancient, guys. Like the durability is a question, sure, right? But like in terms of what he is on a basketball floor as an offensive talent, he is still a fringe all-star caliber player. He is a really, really, really good player that, similarly to like a Kobe White, there's kind of a theme here, I feel. Similarly to Kobe White, he has really nice versatility as an offensive player, good off-ball threat, which makes him a good fit actually next to Kobe White, at least on the offensive end. Defensively, it's a different matter, but offensively, it's like, well, damn, we got two guys that can light up defenses with the ball in their hand, whether it's scoring. They're both fine playmakers, but with their scoring on or off the ball, pick and roll, off screens, isolation, you name it, like they are both dynamic scoring threats that can do it with or without the ball in their hand. And for that reason, it makes them a really fun duo to pair together. And I think again, Zach starting to get just a little underrated. If I'm a team come trade deadline that's like, hey, look, I could really, really use a third real scorer. Zach LaVine's a guy that I will look for as long as the deal makes sense. The contract is something to be, a little bit worried about, but I do like Zach LaVine still. And then we got to talk about Josh Giddey, because Josh Giddey is such a weird player. He just is. He's a really, really weird player because he is a talented playmaker still with the ability to make a multitude, if not all the passes you could possibly think of. He has really nice in-between game where he loves to be able to get you kind of on his hip, get to that mid-range game, get to the floater, is able to attack closeouts and knock down mid-range jumpers. He can get just outright played off the floor at times due to teams just not guarding him on the perimeter. We saw that a ton in the Dallas series where Dallas would put Luka on him at times or put, another defender on him that they want to kind of hide for a period of time. And, the obvious kind of rebuttal to that is, well, use him as a screener, right? And OKC did. And what the counter to that would be is, okay, cool, instead of putting our worst defender on him, if you want to put him in the screening action, okay, cool, we're going to now put our best defender on him. And if you want to use him as a screener, that's fine. And we're going to go with a bunch of switching actions. It was a point in the Pelican series. The Pelicans went with Herb Jones for a period of time on Josh Giddey, because if you wanted to pull Josh Giddey to the ball screen, then it's just a Herb Jones switch on SGA, which it's already a good defender on SGA in the first place. Or if you don't want to do that, then guess what? That's just another defender you have to kind of clog up the lanes. So, and Dallas did this a little bit too. So, and even, and again, another counter that could be, well, hey, look, let's just put the ball in his hands. And I can't describe his ball security better than as a Charger fan. It's like Quentin Johnston, where he will just have, or think of a running back actually, that will just have some of the weirdest effing fumbles possible, where it's like, how did you manage to fumble that? And it's purely ball security. That's Giddey does have some plays where he does have, he forces a pass here or misreads the defense there. But truthfully, a lot of Giddey's turnovers, it's just ball security, where maybe he'll drop the ball or whatever, or he'll bring the ball a little bit lower below his chest when about to explode up to the rim, and a defender's just able to swipe down at it. Or, when he's dribbling, he really easily loses the ball on possession. Stuff like that. And it's for a guy your size, your playmaking ability, that's just so weird. And it just never really made sense for me. And it definitely didn't make any sense going back and watching his film. It's oh man, what are we doing here, right? He is still, though, incredibly young. He is incredibly young still. And like I said, I'm honestly kind of happy specifically for Josh Giddey that I get to go to a spot that I don't think Chicago's trying to win here, right? And I surely as hell hope they aren't. For the Bulls' sake, be bad for a year, right? So go make your mistake, go develop, man, and try to get better. And there's kind of my optimistic lens, if you will, on Josh Giddey. And then Patrick Williams, before he got injured, I don't want to say he was completely about to break out, but Patrick Williams was really putting together some really fun tape. And dare I say, I think he's the guy, him and Ayo Dosunmu are both fighting for, who, most, really, really wants to break out the most this season. Because I think those are two guys that are, primed for big breakouts this season. I'm excited for Patrick Williams. He shot incredibly well from 3-point range last season. He shot nearly 40% from three and 41% open catch and shoot threes last season. Took a huge step in his ability to just attack closeouts, play off with 2 feet, get to the mid-range game and create for himself, or it's just his ability to create in one-on-one in general and hit mid-range jumpers around the elbow area where he loves to kind of get to his spots. start to get increasingly more comfortable with this too. And that's why I am excited about Patrick Williams heading into this season, and why I do have the arrow pointing up. But the thing that could very easily make that arrow not be pointing up and not pointing down necessarily, but just kind of be like, oh, okay, like this is what he is, right? The thing that could very easily like make that the case is his finishing, because he is downright an awful finisher at the rim, and it honestly doesn't make sense why he's so bad. It's like he just doesn't explode up at the rim. That's just the best way to describe it. And maybe it's a technique and a footwork thing, and hopefully that gets worked out, because I think he's an adequate athlete, right? I don't think it's that necessarily, but he's a really good offensive rebounding wing. So you combine the shooting, the mid-range ability, the offensive rebounding stuff. If he's able to finish and tighten up around the basket, then he's primed for a breakout, because defensively he's awesome. And then again, Big Vooch, Nikola Vucevic. In 2024, he's a really good screener, which I think is super important for their offense, like their screen game with LaVine and Kobe White. And I think this year, Giddey and Io is super important, right? Their ability to like give their guard or their lead ball handlers the ball, say, hey, look, Vooch, let's have us run some two-man game here on the empty side. And that's super, super important for this team. What this team really needs from Vooch, and maybe this is why they got a Jalen Smith, is Vooch shot 29% on catch-shoot threes last season. And they need him to become a reliable floor spacer again, because that really tanked, I think, his offensive value and impact as a player. He's a fine post player, but I think where Bulls fans, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, where Bulls fans have the biggest disconnect with Billy Donovan is, why the hell in 2024 are we over-relying on Nikola Vucevic post-up attempts? Like, the amount of times they went to Big Vooch in the post was kind of annoying, where he's fine, but like he's not the type of guy that I'm going to him consistently as frequently as the Bulls did. That one never really made sense to me. It was definitely frustrating for me when I'm going back and watching film. Like, dog, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, and LaVine was sorry, I get it, but DeMar DeRozan, hello, let's stop force feeding Vucevic post touches. So I like Vooch. I think he's fine. I think they'll probably just ride out his contract instead of trying to offload him elsewhere. But yeah, man. And that's going to wrap up kind of the offensive section here. We're going to briefly kind of go over this team's defense. And with the starters, there's not a ton of optimism. As a matter of fact, the defensive punch, if you will, really, really comes from the bench. They only have really one really bad defender. I think like Giddey, Vooch, and LaVine are all in certain areas okay, where Kobe White, I think, is just not good. And we'll start off with Kobe White. It's just with Kobe White, I think it's okay, cool. It's the readjustment period, right? Where, he took a big step up in usage this season, because in 23, he wasn't awful defensively, right? He, in terms of like defensive EPM or whatever, 41st percentile 2023. This season, 6th percentile in defensive EPM, which is estimated plus minus, defensive estimated plus minus. He's not much of a defensive playmaker. He navigates screens fairly all right. I think honestly with Kobe White, it might just be more or less just an effort thing, if that makes sense. You look at the rest of this starting group, LaVine and Giddey, I think, compete defensively, but I don't think necessarily it's something that they like are actively putting in a bunch of effort defensively. The real star of the show defensively with this team is most certainly Patrick Williams, right? It's most certainly Patrick Williams. I think he is one of the better wing stopping, defensive, perimeter defenders, on ball perimeter defenders, especially in the league, like where he's able to guard you one-on-one in space. Like, his film is awesome. Vucevic, his biggest problem is more or less where like you have to get big Vucevic out in space. If you can get Vucevic in space and have him guarding a pick and roll and stuff like that, then it gets really, really nasty with Vucevic at times. He's a fine post player, solid defensive rebounder. But like I said, like the hype with the defense for this team really actually comes from this bench, where You have an Ayo Dosunmu, who's a really good defender. You have a Javon Carter, who's a really good defender. You have a Dalen Terry, who I think this team is kind of hoping finally takes that next step this season. Lonzo's a big question mark for them, where if Lonzo gets back and he's healthy, fully healthy, then you get one of the 10 best, guard defenders in the league. So a lot of this team's defense is really going to rely on, can Kobe White kind of get back to being somewhat below average defensively than just outright bad? And like if Patrick Williams continue to get better, as modest, like how good is he year one as a defender? Dalen Terry, can he stay in the rotation, right? I think that's really going to be what determines like how good this team's going to be defensively. And then we'll kind of wrap up here with the strengths and weaknesses for this Bulls squad. And for me, I kind of just landed with there's not a ton of massive strengths for this team. I think the backcourt scoring legitimately is one. Like I talked about this, a lot already, but Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Ayo Dosunmu, dare I say Josh Giddey, Lonzo Ball, if he could get back healthy. That is, even if we were like eliminate Lonzo and eliminate Josh Giddey, LaVine, Kobe White, and Ayo by themselves is perfectly fine. And then you go to like that young core potential. I have the arrow pointing up on all Mattis, Patrick Williams, and Kobe White. You throw in an Ayo Dosunmu. You throw in, like, who knows, maybe Josh Giddey is able to get better, right? Maybe Dalen Terry finally takes that next step. There is a lot of potential here with this Bulls group. It is imperative, actually, that this Bulls team kind of figures out some of these guys. Like, okay, how good can Kobe get? How good can Ayo get? So they know they have a clear vision of what they want to, target in the 2025 draft class, which can be a generational draft class. And then weaknesses for me, man. That starting group's defense, I didn't elaborate too much on it, as much as I probably would have liked to. But that starting group's defense is going to be really bad. It's going to be one of the worst groups in the league. I didn't talk about it as much, but I do have this Bulls defense in my second to last tier, in tier 6 for me, coming in with, tier 6, the 20th to 24th best defenses in the NBA. So they are a bottom 10 defense, and it really starts with that starting group, because like I said, the bench group has more things going for him defensively. You have Dalen Terry, Mattis can definitely be a good defender year one. Torrey Craig's fine. Javon Carter, Ayo Dosunmu, like Lonzo, if he's back and fully healthy. So I think their big depth is really underwhelming. Like, how much do I really trust and put stock into a Jalen Smith and a Dama Sunoco? And I think playmaking, this is maybe more of a soft weakness. But I don't think there is this alpha playmaker on this squad. Like Kobe White's probably their best playmaker right now. And you're hoping Kobe takes the next step. But let's say if Kobe White is just this guy playmaking wise, then you're stuck with like not having this great playmaker. They've kind of been in this spot. And again, I guess this is where Lonzo coming back can help them out a lot. But I don't want to over rely on a guy that hasn't touched the basketball floor in 2 years, if that makes sense. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode here of our in-depth preseason power ranking series. Now I'm going to turn it over to my great interview with my guy Ross Pence. It was a bunch of fun being able to talk it up with them. Make sure you guys hit the like button and subscribe here to the channel if you haven't already. And let's get to our interview. All right, everybody, welcome into our post breakdown interview. Got my guy Ross Pence. You can follow him on all social media platforms at Shy Sports Ross. Does a bunch of great stuff on his own channel, Ross Penn's YouTube channel. I think Ross, in preparation for this series, I think I stumbled upon your Kobe White breakdown. And for great work, by the way, on that. Ross does amazing stuff. So again, go check out all stuff he does. And I knew Kobe White was good, but then like stumbling upon that, I was like, damn, I gotta go watch some more Kobe White tape. And I thought he should have won Most Improved Player for sure last season.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you for all that. I really appreciate it, Sean, and I appreciate you having me on. Bulls fans are super excited about the future of Kobe White, and I mean, you saw it all over social media. Bulls fans wanted him to win Most Improved Player, and I think the proof was kind of in the pudding. You saw his performance last season. I mean, in terms of like the way that I look at the Most Improved Player award, the person who actually made the most difference between their game the previous season and this season, I feel like you can't deny that it was Kobe White. And yeah, man, I just I was actually reviewing that December video that I made, looking at, he had a really strong stretch in December,
Mhm.
and he just looked so confident, even, up to that play-in game against Atlanta, just like taking control in the fourth quarter. I think Bulls fans have a really bright future with Kobe White. It remains to be seen about the rest of the roster, but Kobe White is a very bright spot for sure.
Maybe like my memories is serving me right at the moment. Didn't like Tyrese Maxey win it or something?
Yeah, it was Maxi,
Which I
and
thought was bogus because your
right,
definition of the award is how it should be taken.
right, like Maxi is already a very good player, all-star, like we knew that, and
Yeah.
yeah, it just kind of felt like in the spirit of the award, Kobe White, he matched it.
Yeah. I've kind of been on this tirade, I guess, against like teams across all of professional sports that been like aimlessly mediocre and not willing to pick a direction. Like for me, currently, I'm on the Raptors' ass about that. Like, bro,
Yeah,
thank you,
yeah,
go be bad. The Nets, I love the Mikal trade. Like, thank you, go be bad for a
yeah,
year. Go get yourself Cooper Flag or Ace Bailey or whatever. And for a second there, that's kind of what the Bulls were.
yeah, yeah.
And
I'm all for tanking for the Bulls if it's me.
yeah, and so I'm gonna start things off that way. So first off, number 27 ranked Chicago Bulls in my power rankings is what was your initial reaction when you hear that?
Fair, valid. I think they might overperform a little bit, and that's actually a concern that I think a lot of Bulls fans have, is that like, you know, they were already so mediocre. Like it's not that hard to get back to that level of mediocrity.
Hmm.
And losing DeRozan is obviously going to change, the makeup of the team a little bit, but they haven't really changed that much. So I mean, I think you have them in the right area, the right tier of the NBA. It just kind of remains to be seen, like, are they going to be another fringe playoff team? Or to your point about like Cooper Flag, like, are they actually going to go all the way in, lose a lot, and be in the conversation?
like I don't understand that, like from like team outlooks in general. Like, you're the Bulls, you're gonna make money regardless. Like, just go be bad for a year. Speaking of DeMar, there were a lot of talks for a while that are the Bulls going to do the unthinkable and pay DeMar DeRozan $40+ million to be the ninth seed again next season. They
Yeah.
don't. They ultimately sign and trade him to Sacramento. What were your thoughts on the DeRozan trade, getting off DeMar, and like, what do you think? How do you think life post DeMar DeRozan looks like for the Chicago Bulls?
Yeah, and you know what? Not to overlook Alex Caruso too, because I feel like
Yes.
that was kind of the first step to getting to the post DeMar DeRozan era. Trading Caruso was one of those things that, like, every trade deadline, everyone was talking about. Okay, the Bulls aren't good enough to make the playoffs. They're not actually making a run. Alex Caruso is probably the most valuable player they have on the roster. DeMar DeRozan maybe next after him. And yeah, I think it was time. I loved having DeRozan in Chicago. I'm a huge fan of his. I'll be a fan of his for the rest of his career. But it was time to really pick a direction between, you know, it's your point about, like, not being mediocre, being the nine seed again, actually being bad. So I mean, I feel like that's the message the Bulls sent by trading Caruso, by letting DeRozan go, facilitating the sign and trades to Sacramento. You can argue the Bulls could have gotten more if they had traded these guys at the trade deadline last season. I
Yeah.
think that that's probably true. It's difficult to see them not get any, like, significant draft capital back for two of their best players. That
Hmm.
part I definitely struggle with, as someone who watches a lot of, like, cap management, like 2K logic, kind of like roster building. It's just like, oh, what are you doing with your assets? Like, you're not managing these right.
You're not getting three
So,
first-round picks. What are you doing?
right. Like, what the hell? So yeah, I mean, I think that's the part that Bulls fans probably have a little sour taste in their mouth about. But I think it's the right move. It's the right time to let DeRozan do his own thing. I think he actually is a pretty good fit in Sacramento. I think that'll work out for him well. And for the Bulls side of things, they've been trying for years to make this Levine DeRozan fit work. And I think when everyone was perfectly healthy, and a lot of
22.
team, yeah, and a lot of teams at the time were honestly, that was like the COVID season when a bunch of players were out and teams had to bring in like replacement players.
Yeah.
And the Bulls were able to take advantage of that in the Eastern Conference. They were able to make a really nice run. And they were healthy for the first half of that season, and you saw that they were the first to see the East. So like I think you needed very specific conditions to get that
Mhm.
team to work to its maximum potential. And obviously it just didn't work out that way. So I think now with Levine, and we'll probably get into that here in a bit, but with his, mindset, his attitude, all that stuff aside from a basketball fit standpoint, I do think the roster probably fits a little bit better now.
Yeah.
If you're just ignoring the off the court stuff, it does seem like they could run a little bit more of like a pace and space kind of offense. They can get guys moving in transition.
Mhm.
Not have to get so bogged down by dribbling in the half court, which tended to be kind of the fallback with DeRozan. And I think it'll be good for the young players like Kobe White, like Patrick Williams to probably play with a little less pressure. I think that was another thing with DeRozan is like he was the guy in the fourth quarter. He was
Mhm.
always the guy. And now I think there's a little bit less pressure to like put the ball in his hands and go out there and just lean on DeRozan in the fourth quarter. Like they got to play some basketball now. You know what I mean? Like they can't just let DeRozan put the team on his back and carry them to victory. They're gonna have to actually play some ball. So I think the makeup of the team has changed significantly, and hopefully the mindset of a lot of these players is no longer like, yeah, let's watch DeRozan because he's amazing. Let's watch him do his thing.
Mhm.
Now it's like, how do we all kind of contribute to the way that we can win?
The Bulls front office has been like under a lot of fire over the past few years for again like that mediocre kind of mindset that we just talked about. But one of the things I think you can actually give them credit for, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, um, I think the Bulls have done as good of a job as just about anybody at paying a guy right before he breaks out. Kobe
Yeah,
White and now Patrick Io even a little bit.
yeah,
Now Patrick Williams. My initial reaction, like honestly, like full transparency, was like, oh, okay. But then you're like, oh crap, no, that contract's actually really, really good.
yeah,
Because I think it's obvious that he's still on the upward trend in terms of his, growth development program or development plan or whatever.
yeah.
So I guess let's start there. Let's talk about Patrick Williams. What was your initial reaction to the contract? How do you think like that kind of represents his play last year? And what are like even some of your expectations for Patrick Williams heading into next year? It's kind of a loaded question, but he's a fun player.
He is. And you know what? You really got me thinking a lot. It's a good question. Just kind of like about his contract, the value and where that could go for the Bulls. He's only 22 years old. And like
Yeah.
if he didn't get any better at all, like if he just stayed the same player he is right now, he would still be one of the best 3-and-D players in the league. And
Hmm.
that's the kind of premium that playoff teams love. They love to have 3-and-D kind of players. And at 22 years old, like there's still I know that Bulls fans probably get memed a lot for this, for doing the whole potential thing with Patrick Williams, but like he already is a very valuable player. His physical, like the dude's measurables are off the chart. He's so physical the way he plays. And at what was it, $90 million, 5 years, like you have such an opportunity there. You've created a window where if he takes a big leap in the next season or two, you have him under one of the best value contracts for a player at his position in the league.
Yeah.
So, if he's getting better at rebounding, if he's starting to look like a more demanding player on offense, creating his own shots, like, hey man, that could end up being one of the best contracts. We'll see. He has dealt with some injury issues in his career, and that's a concern for me for sure. But I was fully on board with re-signing Pat, especially if the idea was to let DeRozan walk. Like you said, the Bulls, are they actually going to pay DeRozan that money? It would have had to been one or the other. It would have had to be DeRozan or Patrick Williams, and so I think they went with the right route, going with the young guy, going with the rebuild route, and just excited to see how he can take the next step, because we've seen those flashes of him, dominating certain games, driving
Hmm.
down the lane, getting those poster dunks. Like those are highlight plays. We want to see them put into the greater context of winning a basketball game.
I think with Patrick Williams, let's say that and even like you said, he stays exactly like this. This is about on par for a really, really good 3-and-D wing. right? He shot 39% last season. The quick fact check, 39.1% on catch and shoot looks last season. You combine that with the really high level perimeter defense and things of that nature, stays the exact same. It's a really good contract. Let's say by year 3 of the contract, he somehow is not all-star, but whatever the very tier below that is. Like, we're talking 18-point per game guy, still doing the stuff that he's doing on both ends of the floor. This is amongst, with the increase in like the caps are going to keep going up, guys. This is one of the 5 best contracts in the NBA by far.
And so tradability becomes the question then of like, if the Bulls are still losing at that point, Pat is looking good. You might be able to, well, knowing the Bulls front office, maybe not, but you might be able to get a legitimate haul for him from one of those contenders that wants to make, someone who's close and wants to take that next step.
Yeah. The Bulls pulling off a trade for one of their in-demand players? Never.
No, wait way. 2 years until the value drops.
Yeah.
Seems to be the move.
And then I think this actually goes back to our point about like them kind of choosing we'll call it the direct direction, right? Like with now, and like you mentioned, we kind of saw some of the flashes with some more self-creation stuff, the ability to put the ball down and maybe attack a closeout a little bit better and gets in the mid-range game. Now there shouldn't be at the very least any expectations on this team. Right. Now it should be, Pat, go hoop, go get all the little kinks or whatever, work that stuff out of your game and like continue to develop. And now we're going to give you more on ball reps. Kobe, go crazy. I mean, you still have Zach, but still to a certain extent within probably having more of a real system, like you said, being able to have an offense. Is it, super one guy dominate, especially in the clutch? Go make mistakes, Pat, in clutch time. Go miss a game-winning 3. I mean, hopefully not for your sake, but you get my point. Like, go make those mistakes.
Have the opportunity, the rep, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's also really, 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 really cool about that. Let's get back to a guy that we briefly touched on earlier, and that is, I guess, the second of like this duo of promising upside players, if you will, and that's Coby White. I have a thing where like if I give the player their overall grade, and if I think they are on the rise still, like there's another step coming this season, I give them like a little arrow right next to their name. Am I crazy to think Coby White can somehow get even more better after last season?
I agree. I feel wholeheartedly that we haven't seen Kobe at his best yet. We've seen him have great games. We've seen him string together. Like, that's why he was in the most improved player conversation, because he took the flashes, kind of what we were talking about with Pat. He took the flashes and put them together into a whole package for a whole season. And, we saw him play great games. What we're going to hope to see now, and I think was kind of the spark in a lot of Bulls fans' eyes, was like, yo, what if Kobe is like, Kobe's not, the next Lonzo or the next great point guard? What if he's actually more of like a Zach LaVine type player? Like, what if he's going to be an off-ball flamethrower? What if he's going to start to really find that shot consistently and make it more consistently? Not to take away from his playmaking abilities, but the Bulls did bring in Josh Giddey. They are expected to. I mean, they're expecting Lonzo to be back this season. We'll see what happens there. So it's a crowded backcourt with Io as well. There's only so many ball handling reps to go around. There's only so many guys that can create shots for other players. I think with Kobe, the upside there is like, he's such a versatile player. And he's shown us, the other thing I don't want to forget to mention is his defense. So he's also shown us flashes defensively. So I feel like there's more here to his game that we haven't seen quite yet. Like, we've seen a lot of really cool highlight plays, but I'm looking to see like the volume. I want to see him go off for like 30, 40 points on a consistent basis. Because I feel like he's such a streaky shooter. He's such a flamethrower when he's on. It's so fun to watch. Like, something that the Bulls did last season that really frustrated me is that when he was having a hot game, they wouldn't feed him. Like, they wouldn't be feeding the hot hand, It's like he's a deferential player because he knows that he's playing alongside Vooch. He's playing alongside DeRozan, LaVine. Kobe is such a good shooter. Like, put him in position to succeed, and I think he will take you. I mean, as far like, he's a really good player. And man, I guess a long-winded answer, but my way of saying, I just think that like Kobe can be a 25 point per game player every night, in my opinion. if you feed
It
him.
Yeah, it is with Kobe. Is it for you more or less just like kind of like you said, kind of increasing that volume and therefore kind of like increasing the level of consistency and maybe be consistently like with consistency in terms of the reps he's getting,
Yeah.
his efficiency. Like, is that really what you're looking for in terms of like him taking the next step, or is it something more skill related with Kobe White?
No, it's the volume and the consistency for me for sure because I feel like that's always been one of the Bulls' biggest issues is inconsistency. And again to kind of that point of like finding the hot hand, feeding the guy who's playing well. Like that's the problem with the Bulls over the last few seasons is that they don't have that identity, right?
Hmm.
They don't have. I mean, I guess apart from DeRozan being the guy in the fourth quarter, the offensive identity was kind of up in the air. Like some nights it's Vooch who's putting up a bunch of points. Some nights it's Zach who's putting up a bunch of points. Like
Yeah,
everyone's kind of swapping the share. I want to see Kobe be the guy on a night in, night out basis. And that does kind of necessitate the question of like, do you keep Zach and Kobe on the same team? And I'm sure
yeah.
we're gonna get to that. But I do think that if you put the ball in his hands, you set up plays for him, you get him going, off ball screens, trying to get him open in the corner,
Hmm.
running those pick and rolls. He's really great running those. Like there's just so many ways that he can be effective because he's a good driver, he's a good shooter, he's a good passer. Like he's really solid in all of those areas. I just think that more reps, more opportunities, he'll shine. And people will probably start to understand why Bulls fans were clamoring so hard for him to be the most improved player because if you compare this to like his rookie season, like totally different player,
Hmm.
totally different guy. And I think the biggest thing is that confidence factor. Like he's become a vocal player in the huddle, in the locker room. And when he came into the league, he was just a kid, but it's cool to see that development. And I just hope that he keeps calling for the shot. I want to see him call for the shot. I want to see him, telling his teammates, find me, like find me, get me the
Hmm.
ball, and I will score.
Yeah. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Bulls fans' thoughts about head coach Billy Donovan. I think if I had to describe like the most he's fine coach in the league,
Yeah.
like it's probably Billy Donovan. Like I don't have too many gripes. I'm not raving about, but I think he's fine from my perspective. But what's your opinion, Bulls fans? You think opinion about Billy?
Bulls fans don't like him. I
Okay.
can I can say that pretty confidently. Bulls fans do not like Billy. I think some of it's warranted, and then some of it's a little unfair because again, we've talked about the roster fit. Like the roster fit's been weird for years. I
Hmm.
don't think you could hire. There's a short list of coaches that could come in and take a team like the Bulls to actually another level. I don't
Yeah.
think that list of coaches is very long. So I mean, yes, you can knock Billy for not being a part of the elite tier of coaches, I guess, but on the other end of that is the in-game adjustments and some of the rotational decisions he makes. Like Derek Jones Jr. was a player that the Bulls had for 2 seasons, was super effective, and Billy Donovan would take him out of the rotation when he was totally healthy. He'd be a healthy scratch for long stretches of the season, and we just saw the dude make a major contribution to an NBA Finals run. So
Yeah.
I think it's things like that that really frustrate Bulls fans. Maybe relying a little bit too much on Vucevic sometimes when he's having a bad game. Just some of the in-game decisions that Billy makes really frustrate Bulls fans. But from a pure like X's and O's standpoint, like you said, he's solid. I don't really have major gripes. Like he's a smart coach. He's developed Kobe White. He's developed Iota Sumu. He's developed Patrick Williams. Those are players that have gotten better under Billy Donovan's coaching. So it's hard for me to say that he doesn't, develop young talent, which is another thing that Bulls fans always seem to harbor back towards. Because I think we've been kind of burned by that from the Garpax era and like the Hoiberg era and like all
Yeah.
that stuff, like Jim Boylan and all that stuff. Yeah, like there was a,
Ooh.
a long stretch.
Eesh.
Yeah, there was a long stretch of time where the Bulls like didn't develop anyone. They weren't doing anything, and like you can say that they're still treading water. I think it's fair, but they are doing a little bit more in terms of player development. And it does seem like they have a nice, well-rounded coaching staff. They brought in a couple more assistants. Wes Unseld Jr. joined the squad this
Yeah.
offseason. He's very highly regarded for his offensive philosophies. So, you combine that with some of the changes they've made to the roster. Ideally, I don't know how much difference an assistant coach will make, but ideally this season, we will see a little bit more of the basketball mind of Billy Donovan. Just kind of playing with the roster, seeing what happens with the young players. But I think the biggest gripe for Bulls fans, those in-game adjustments and like the out of timeout calls. Like he doesn't really run a lot of inbounds plays. And
Yeah.
so that's another thing that Bulls fans struggle with. Like with DeMar, there was a lot of times where there's no play. It's just get the ball to DeMar. There's no inbounds play. There's no lob to the basket. There's no double screen. There's nothing like that. So now they have to be a little bit more creative, and I'm curious to see, how that looks going forward.
If I said, Billy Donovan, like, somewhere between the 15th and like 20th best coach in the NBA, would you say that's about accurate?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, bottom
solid.
15. Yeah, he's bottom 15 for sure, but he's not the worst coach, certainly. There are plenty of teams that would benefit from having Billy Donovan as their head coach. But there are also plenty of teams that like he probably wouldn't make a huge difference for.
Yeah.
So I think you're right on. And I don't have anything like there's a lot of Bulls fans that want to fire Billy Donovan. I'm not like I've struggled with that a little bit, but I'm not fully on board with firing him just because for young players, again, Kobe White, Patrick Williams, now you're bringing in Buzelis, like having that consistency is still a good thing. And,
Mhm.
he's not bad enough to the point where I'm like, okay, they got to get him out of here. But with that said, if they ever do contend again in the future, I mean, ever, hopefully, I I highly doubt Billy
Hopefully in my
Donovan.
lifetime.
Right. Hopefully, at some point in my lifetime, they're back in the playoffs. Highly doubt that Billy Donovan is still the coach at that point. He's a better transition coach.
Yeah, I think Billy's for sure here for, I would say, another 2, because I feel like it's hard to fire him after this upcoming year, because I
Yeah.
just think that they are internally say, yeah, we're gonna go be bad, or I'm hoping that's the case. But with like kind of keeping that same frame of mind here, let's talk about that development. Let's talk about the number 11th overall pick. One of
Yeah.
my favorite guys in this class. It took me a while, admittedly, to kind of get behind him. And then you realize that G League Ignite was a shit show, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, never mind. See between that, this guy's a really good player.
Yeah.
For those who have been living under a rock, I'm talking about Matt Buzelis. What was your reaction on draft night to him getting taken at 11th? What are your thoughts about him from Summer League? Because I was honestly pleasantly surprised and
Yeah.
glad the Bulls took Buzelis at 11. I was like, no, please don't take Topage. Please don't take another damn card. So yeah,
Yeah.
what was kind of your reaction to everything?
I think the draft played out perfectly for the Bulls. Truthfully, I think that was one of the best case scenarios that they could have ended up with. Ron Holland was kind of the guy going into the night that I'm like, all right, if the Bulls end up with him, like I'm gonna be stoked tonight. And honestly, Matas wasn't fully like he was on my radar. I scouted him and everything, but in my opinion, he was gonna go higher. I thought he was
Yeah.
gonna be like a top 7, top 8 player.
Yep.
So it just like it was a kind of thing where I'm like, okay, who's gonna be there when we're picking? And the way that the cards were dealt, the Bulls ended up, with a perfect play, and they didn't screw it up, which is great. To your point, they had options. There were other options that have been discussed. There was even options about the Bulls trading up to try to get Klingon, which the assets just aren't there. I think they were patient, and it paid off well for them. Summer League Buzelis, man, it's summer league, right? There's only so much that you can glean from a summer league performance, but something that I've talked with a few different people about in terms of like player development and things that are actually scalable, things that are indicators of future success in the NBA. And those tend to be things like how many shots are you taking? How many three-pointers are you attempting? How many shots are you blocking? How many passes are you making? How many assists do those turn into? So those are the things that Buzelis showed us. Maybe the efficiency wasn't there.
Mhm.
Maybe the 3-point efficiency wasn't as good as some people were hoping. He turned the ball over a few times. That's okay. To me, it's the mentality and it's the motor and the confidence. Those are things that can't really be trained, can't really be taught. At least rarely in the NBA do you see someone come in with low confidence and turn into a high motor, high confidence player. Like Buzelis thinks that he's the best player in this draft.
I love
He
it so much.
and you know
It's
what? Not
so
even
fun.
thinks, he knows it. Like
Yeah.
he knows it in his
He's
head that
talked himself into it. I don't mean
right.
that like in a bad way, but like he said it so much, like, oh shit, I'm the best player in this draft class.
Exactly. And that is the kind of energy that I think Bulls fans, I mean, any NBA fan would love, but
Yeah.
Bulls fans have kind of been missing. To Patrick Williams, back to Patrick Williams for a second. Love the guy. but not trying to take anything away from him. That's one of the struggles, or one of the concerns that Bulls fans have always had with him, is like, where's the mentality? Where's the aggressiveness? And when are we going to see that kind of confidence come out of him? I mean, Buzelis just doing it first game in summer league, trying to dunk the rim off the backboard. Like, dude has so much energy. He's going to get the crowd pumped in the United Center. I love that for him coming into the league. I think, he wasn't the best player in summer league, but what I said is, like, if there was a best vibes award, Modest would have won it, because like he had the best vibes out of, in my opinion, any player in summer league, because he looked like a dude who's here to stay. He looked like the kind of guy that you're going to see on highlight reels for years and years to come, which is super exciting. In a lot of ways, the Bulls front office kind of got lucky. Like, I think they kind of fell ass backwards into one of the best players in the draft. And
Yeah.
now it's like, it kind of changes things a little bit. It's like, okay, if you're actually able to get like a Cooper Flag or a Cam Boozer over the next couple of years, you might have a core here, man. Like,
Yeah.
all of a sudden things are looking bright if you do this the right way.
I had Mattis ultimately fifth on my board, on my
Yeah.
draft board. I'm gonna throw out this comp for you, at you rather, for Mattis. My pro comp, I saw a few of them. A lot of them I actually didn't really care for.
Mhm.
My actual pro comp for was Franz Wagner.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I like
Yeah.
that comp. That's one of the players the Bulls technically traded to get Vucevic.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that, again, Bulls fans are going to love that kind of player, that kind of attitude,
Yeah.
cuz like Wagner has that kind of chip on his shoulder.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that comparison. That's a good one.
Yeah. Let's get to this. So we've kind of scooted around this talking point here. It's now here.
Mhm.
You have two aging. I don't even. One of them I'll still use the word star. The other, I think Vucevic is kind of past that point. Clearly,
Yeah.
what do you think the Bulls should do with Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, LaVine? I think obviously the contract gets talked about a ton, and he's been involved in a bunch of trade talks. I think LaVine, in terms of simply just the talent, and I understand the reasoning, because again, I think a large part of it is due to the contract, but simply the talent, I think Zach LaVine's kind of become underrated. But besides the point, what do you think the Bulls should do with Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic?
Yeah, this is a great question, because this is what's on everyone's mind headed into the season right now, is like, what is actually going to happen. And I think, in all likelihood, what's realistic, right? Zach's trade value is at an all-time low right now, due
Mm-hmm.
to media narratives, optics, whatever it is. It's low. And Vucevic, I don't think a market even exists. Like, I don't think there's a team, at least right now in the offseason, that wants to trade for him. Now, fast forward to February at the trade deadline, you might have a team, let's say like the Warriors, that feels like maybe they're another big man away. Maybe they want to trade for Vucevic. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. That was a name that I heard tossed around a little bit this offseason in terms of a place that Vuce might end up. Um, and same thing with Zach, is like a team like the Clippers, that feels like maybe they're close. Maybe one player could really break this thing open. So I think that's kind of the move right now for the Bulls, is like, go into this season with no expectations, no expectations of contending, no, lofty expectations of trying to make the playoffs or making a push at the end of the season. There should be no conversations about trying to add players at the deadline. The question should be, how do we kind of rehab the value of these two players that, at some point were respected and wanted and valued by other teams.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be an uphill battle, surely, but I think you might see the Bulls start the season by kind of just giving Zach the rock, letting him do his thing, see if he goes off for another like 50-point game or something like that, and just kind of show people like, yeah, he still got it. He's still Zach LaVine. He can still, shoot the lights off the building. And for Vooch, yeah, I mean, I think it's less likely that he gets moved. I feel like it's more likely that they just kind of ride it out with Vooch.
Yeah.
We'll
It's only
see what
another year
happens.
after this year.
Right. We'll see what happens at the trade deadline again. Maybe some team gets desperate. But with Vooch, it's one thing to try to put like an actual playoff contending team around Vooch. It's another thing to have Vooch on a tanking team. I mean, he was great for that for Orlando. He was really good when they didn't want to win a lot
Yeah.
of games. So, for young players who, like Kobe again, running the pick and roll, Patrick Williams getting
Mhm.
him open for three, like having a kind of calming veteran presence, it's not a bad thing. So I'm not totally against the idea of rocking it out with Vooch through the rest of his contract. I just think, if there is a team that's interested in having a conversation, just have that conversation. I think the Bulls have been so stubborn, especially in regards to Vooch. I think that there's maybe some relationships behind the scenes, like between AK and Vooch, like maybe they're buddies, but it does seem like they've been very, very stubborn about any idea of like moving away from him. There
Mhm.
seems to be a very I almost want to say like a marriage there. Like they really, really want to keep that together. And I know Bulls fans get frustrated by it. I'm not totally opposed to it if it's going to be for the rebuilding years.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously Vooch is not the kind of player that you can win a finals with.
All right. We haven't really touched on him. So really quick thoughts. What thoughts on Josh Giddey and kind
Yeah,
of that trade? The last player specific thing we'll talk about here.
for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think Giddy, kind of to the similar point of Levine, where it's like he's had a bad offseason. He obviously had the off the court drama. He
Yeah.
finished the season poorly with how he kind of got taken out of the rotation in the playoffs. So like all of the talk around him has been so negative, and he's almost become underrated as a result of that. Like let's not forget this dude showed flashes of all-star potential in his second season in the league. Like that's super impressive.
Mhm.
So I think that Giddy has a good, like, coming into the Bulls is probably one of the better situations that he could have been traded to, just because there are such low expectations. It's kind of a wide open roster fit. If he wants to be the guy, he could be the guy if that's how he's playing. He didn't want to come off the bench for OKC. So you're on a bad team now, but you have an opportunity here to really again rehab your value, rehab your image. I won't touch the off the court stuff. Just like I hope he's good and I hope everyone's good and I
Yeah.
hope none of that comes back around. But yeah, man, from a basketball perspective, like I think he has an opportunity to maybe change some minds, maybe change the conversation a little bit on a bad team where he can make some mistakes and maybe make some flashy passes, see what happens, get on some highlight reels, and hopefully change the conversation a little bit. But long term, 21 years old, man, I still need to see a little bit more from him in terms of consistency. But I've been watching his performance in the Olympics right now for Australia, and like you can see that he uses his body well. He's able to drive the lane. He's obviously a great passer. Like those are feel things. Those are things that are hard to teach. Like biomechanics, the way that he sticks his shoulder into some guys, using
Mhm.
hesitation moves, stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like that's slick stuff that it's advanced stuff for a guy that gets kind of ragged on for not being a great shooter. He has advanced moves to create space for himself and to get shots up at the rim. It's again doing it consistently over a long stretch of time, and now he's on a bad team. So, long-winded way of saying, I'm excited to see if he's able to actually shed some of those negative connotations.
Mhm.
But if he doesn't, and if he just kind of stays like a Rajon Rondo kind of player who's good at passes and nothing else, that would be very disappointing.
Let's wind down with this. Let's do some Bulls superlatives, if you will. So we have 5 categories here. Let's start this off with the heavy hitter, team MVP.
Yeah, Kobe White. Kobe White. I think we've talked about it a lot already, but Kobe's going to have more shots this season. He already has a year of being the starting point guard, actually multiple seasons of being the starting point guard due to injury at this point.
Yeah.
So dude is totally ready to be given the keys. And I think with more reps, he'll shine.
Yeah, not gonna disagree with you there. Let's go breakout player of the year. So who's gonna be the Bulls breakout?
I mean, is it fair to say Buzelis? Because I feel like, I mean, he's a rookie.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's either him or Giddy, in my opinion. I feel like
Okay.
Buzelis has an opportunity to be one of the first rookies under the Billy Donovan era in Chicago to actually get significant playing time. Because that's
Mhm.
been another gripe that Bulls fans have with Billy is that he doesn't like playing the young guys. And then for the Giddy case, again, it's just like people feel so negatively about him right now.
The only way it should only be going
Right.
up from here because it is so low right now.
Exactly. The only way is up. And on a bad team, like you can make mistakes, you can try different things, and Giddy's the kind of player that I think you need to kind of let him do that and see what happens.
Team defensive player of the year.
Yeah, Patrick Williams.
Yeah,
For sure. Yeah. Pat for
probably
sure.
the only real answer.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been Alex Caruso, and now it's Pat.
Yeah, that was Pat. Which player? And I think we're gonna agree on this one. Which player is the most to prove? Ooh, we might disagree actually.
Yeah,
There's a couple of guys.
there's a couple of guys, and you know what? This is a tough one. I have thoughts and feelings about Dalen Terry.
Okay.
And another guy who kind of gets ragged on and is kind of looked at as like a joke of a draft pick, like the Bulls kind of reached all that stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like he's the kind of player that like it would be very easy for him to kind of be the most improved player. Like if he takes a small step, it will be a significant amount of progress for him. And I'm not trying to rag on the guy even more, but like he has shown the ability to contribute in games. And
Yeah.
since the team is going to be bad, they're going to be tanking. He's probably going to play a lot. I just feel like he might actually show us something. I don't know. Maybe it's just a gut thing. It might just be a total gut feeling. But you see the workout videos, you see him working out with like actual NBA superstars in the off season. He spent like 2 off seasons with DeRozan. I saw him working out with a bunch of the Team USA guys this year. So like he's been a part of like really, really great groups of off-season training programs. So like if he's not successful, it won't be for a lack of trying. It's kind of what I see from Dalen. And I guess another answer for that could be Io as well. I think Io is another guy that showed us a lot towards the end of last season. And if he continues that trajectory where he's hitting those threes, he's making full court passes in transition, like he's making some insane layups at the rim, like he could be in the conversation too. The problem though is that the Bulls are very guard heavy, which is it's such a loaded backcourt. So I guess we'll see what happens. But who's your pick? I'm very curious.
So for most improved, I was gonna go with like Io.
Yeah.
I really like Io. He's a guy that I had a ton of fun kind of like going back to look over his film. I'm gonna go with Io. I'm gonna go with Io for that.
It's a fair pick, and I'm super excited for Io. Like, this is the thing, man. You like letting DeRozan go hurts, and there's a lot of Bulls fans who didn't want to see him leave just because he has been such a franchise cornerstone for 3 years. Like he's been the face, but now is an opportunity to really see like how good these players can be, and it's an opportunity for all of them.
I'm gonna add one more here. Who's under the most pressure this season?
Under the most pressure.
My answer would be Levine.
Yeah, I think Zach is. I think Zach right now he is. Going into the season, he is. Maybe by the end of the season, the pressure's off a little bit if he shows us something, and we kind of everyone wakes up a little bit like, okay, yeah, he's still Zach LaVine. He was an all-star a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with that. Headed into the season, it's like everyone is ragging on this guy. Everyone is expecting him to get traded for like a second round pick, like scraps. Like everyone's talking about like how he has no trade market.
I think the Bulls should trade him in a first to the Lakers.
I'm
biased, of course.
Of course, but like I could see it because that's been one of those destinations that, like, dude, even before Arturas Karnisovas came to town, back when it was still Garpax, people were talking about Levine to the Lakers. Like that's been a conversation for at least 4 years now in Chicago.
Yeah.
So, and the clutch connection is there. Obviously, I could see it. So I think Levine is under a lot of pressure to like rehab that image. And if he has a stinker to start the season or a couple bad games to start the season, like that hot seat gets way hotter.
Yeah. And based off the conversation we've had, I'm sure we don't really want this to happen, but the Bulls are kind of they're my 5th tier where it's like, all right, they're a fringe play-in team. Like there's a lot of talent here still, but the Bulls make the playoffs. If what? There's a sense.
If Matas is the rookie of the year,
yeah.
If Matas is like starting games at a high level enough to win the rookie of the year award, something really good has happened. And yeah, I mean, like if they're actually in the playoff,
at that point, screw taking.
Right, exactly. Like if you're in the playoff conversation because of your rookie of the year, like all right, I guess everything just changed overnight, you know?
I would say like some combination of that and like Kobe White being an all-star.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I don't want to take away from Kobe too because I think he is going to have a really good season.
Yeah.
And you know what? Fringe All Star last season. It's not a crazy idea to see that he might be in the conversation. It's just the Bulls are going to be bad, so bad teams usually don't get rewarded. But we'll see, man. I'm excited. It's weird. Like if you would have asked me like 2 months ago, probably, are you excited for next season? I've been like, hell no, 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 no.
Absolutely not.
No. They're just doing the same old shit, but it's actually feeling like we're turning a new corner. And yeah, I'm just excited to see these young guys get out there and develop.
Well, Ross, I won't take too much more of your time. Appreciate you as always, man. Is there anything else you want to plug or anything you want to mention before we head out here?
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Yeah, at Shy Sports Ross on all the platforms. Most of my followers know me from Twitter, but I do make content on TikTok and Instagram as well. I'm active on all the platforms, so make sure to follow me at Shy Sports Ross. And Sean, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yes, make sure you guys really, really do go check out all of Ross's stuff. He does great content. And we're on to the next one, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode, breaking down the Chicago Bulls. Hit that like button and subscribe. Till next time, everybody. See ya, stay safe, and peace out.